Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Inland Wetlands Watercourse Commission December meeting. Does anybody, either in the audience or in the Zoom, who want to ask a question about anything that's not on the docket, you're welcome to. Otherwise, no audience of citizens. Gentlemen, did you read over the minutes of the last meeting? We have. Any additions, deletions, corrections? If not, can I have a motion to accept?
Commissioner Motion will make a motion to accept minutes of November 9th, 2021.
Have a second? Anybody? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is the public hearing for application 21-09W proposal by the Preserve SM LLC to construct a 76-unit residential development with associated improvements within a regulated wetlands area on Lot 1, Block 10, West Lane. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing, 21-09W.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who is up for?
Good evening. Tim Sullivan on behalf of Preserve SM LLC, Commissioner Chairman. Once again, on behalf of the Preserve here tonight, I'm the development team with Joe Kopacki, Principal, Bart Beauvais, George Logan, Scott Stevens, and Jen Benno. Jen Benno and Scott Stevens are joining us virtually today.
Also Sigrid.
And Sigrid's on there as well, that's right. I think it's appropriate to recognize the 1-year anniversary of this application. Well, actually, the application we do as a project is some COVID-related delays. But here we are. The developer has spared no effort in presenting this plan. During the October 5th and November 9th public hearings, there was comprehensive testimony by engineering, wetlands, wildlife, and plant species experts in support of the application. Since the November 9th public hearing, Bart Beauvais has complied with the commission request for a color-coded construction phasing print, which supports the narrative submitted at the November 9th public hearing. Also, George Logan has submitted a draft report dated December 6th to DEP in response to the NDEP preliminary assessment. This draft report is consistent with the summary report he submitted to the Wetlands Commission at the October 5th public hearing. We also met, I didn't, but Mark met with Anthony Manzi at 192 Harvest Hill to do a site visit to address some drainage issues that Mr. Manzi discussed at the November 9th public hearing. I believe Mark's going to discuss that today. He's got his site visit with Mr. Manzi. At this time, I'll ask Mark to review the points of construction schedule and his site visit. I'm going to turn over to Mr. Logan. And we'll be free to answer any questions. Like I said, Jen Benno and Sigrid, everybody's here tonight to support the application.
Good evening, Mark Beauvais, Home Sons. Just to refresh your memory, this is the project with West Lane being located on the left-hand side, north being located to the right. Proposed roadway entering the site and 76 units to be developed, multi-family and single-family to the right. There are a few things that I was tasked for and I had to do before this meeting, so I'll just go through briefly. Number one, there was some discussion about a construction review statement that we would submit, and I provided a statement for Jim. Typical, I should say this is our first take on it. Likely the state DEP will have a little bit more restrictive type of report maybe every 2 weeks, but it's spread time. I'm proposing a 1 month review to be submitted 15 to 31. That way we're able to completely get it to staff and the staff can include in their packets. So you'll be up to date what's happening on a month-to-month basis, so you won't be behind a month and a half. You'll be within a week of what's happening on the site. Jim's looked at this, he can tell you what he thinks of it in a second, but basically we're looking at periods of heavy rainfall or monthly or any other event that's directed by town staff. So he's a discretion and have it done there. And then once looked at it, we directly to go out there. Basically look at endangered species, activities found on the site, description of installed sedimentation and erosion, what we're anticipating for activities over the next month, and also activities which have taken place over the previous month. So we hopefully have a regulatory log of what's happening on the site, so you're aware of what's happening. The second activity that was discussed was the preparation of a construction schedule and try to color up something so it's a little more obvious than just the narrative I'm given. So what I did is I put the log on there, but I broke it up into sections. Number one, infrastructure improvements in the first phase, because most of the infrastructure is done in the site, except for the construction of a couple of detention ponds, will all be done in the first phase. The connection to the water, the connection to the sewer, the crossing. We've included the mitigation removal of invasive plants within that phase. And then we've also included the buildings that will be located. So you can see the red in the first phase. The second phase, we've included most of the rest of all the multifamily. The third phase and fourth phase include basically single family. We know we're going to have to change it. We recognize we're probably going to have to change it to go, for example, single family sells better than multifamily. We may omit phase 2 and go right into phase 3. But that would in no way impede the development of that because all the detention areas in those sections are included. We've also included the note that Jim was looking for 80% completion. Except I think maybe back when Bill's project you had 80% COs. And what we slightly modified to include COs or substantially completed exteriors of units. So there may be a case that a building is put up and you don't actually get the COs, but they did the driveways and landscaping and such, which is really the intent, I think, what the commission is looking for, not that people living in it, but basically finished up. We've maintained that 80% regulatory authority, so we can't jump from phase to phase without that 80%. No, and obviously you can't do any of these single families in the first phase without getting the infrastructure installed. So the infrastructure has to go first. Then you do the first phase, and the second phase is simply the roads and the units. That would be the second and third, or the second and third phases we include the detention ponds for that work. The second phase would also include the further connection back up to the full house. We would anticipate constructing the bridge. At the same time, we provide the force main since we're working in that wetland anyway, and adjacent to us, so that's what trying to get the bridge installed at the same time get that one. So I've given a copy of this to Jim and he's reviewed it. I think he's comfortable with it as well. The last thing that I did mention is we did meet with Mr. Nancy. Mr. Nancy lives here at the end of Harvestville Road and it's got some drainage issues. Jim and I went out there together. Mr. Nancy popped out. We were out there in the meeting. We looked at his drainage issues. It seems like most of the drainage problems that he has are coming from Roundhill Road, draining through the site and discharging onto our property. We're really not creating any runoff. He's done some creative work, shutting off some areas and kind of diverting flow to minimize his impacts. We've agreed to do whatever we can when we're out there putting in the force main. I think 95% of it is a town maintenance issue. He's related some situations where in the past the town has come out and maintain that. I will say most of that drainage is on the club's property, not on the town's property, but I don't think we have a problem with having the right to access that property through there. We also discussed what we're proposing to do, the removal of fences, replacement of fences. He showed us some irrigation that's in the ground. We're going to put notes on there that that irrigation is to be protected and removed to replace. And again, Mr. Nancy is here. I'm sure he can speak for himself, but I think that in looking at the situation, I think a little bit of cleaning of the pipe that goes through there will go a long way to help alleviate at least the organic issue. It doesn't solve the long-term issue of the water running down the hill, but at least it solves the nuisance issue of the smaller storms or problems. That's basically what we've done over the past month on this plan. George Logan is here, and if you have any questions regarding this, we'll let George talk about his report to the DEP and the environment. the draft copy that was provided for the town. George.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. George Logan for the record. Green Ecological Services also here with me. Sigurd Godwa, who was really the principal author of the report that you see before you. Now, you might say, why draft George? Why not the final thing? But it's, when we're dealing with the DEP, typically what we like to do is to go through all the town commissions, including planning and zoning. Because sometimes there are changes, and we want to make sure that we capture some of these changes, if there are anything that impacts our report, as we make certain recommendations, ones that you already know about. There are recommendations such as the removal of the barberry here and there, and as their street, and the like. So what you have before you is probably 95%. You have the report, which is draft. So there's a couple of little things that we obviously need to do in there, and also to wait to see if there are any additional changes that could take place for planning and zoning. You also have, so there's several attachments, there's 4 attachments. Attachment number 1 is figures. When I say figures, I mean plates of aerial photographs. And really the only thing that's going to be in those are, number 1, sort of location map, you've already seen that in some of our reports, including Jed's and Scott's. An aerial photograph or something similar that shows where the wetlands are, because we're referred to them. So you know what those are. And then the last thing that's going to be there, well, actually 2 of things. One is going to be a couple of archival aerial photographs that show that a whole bunch of the property at one point was open. And you've already seen those. Finally, something that you probably don't care about is the routes that we take, which is something that requires specific requirement that DEP has this. When we're out there, we basically, what we do is we turn on our GPS with a tracker on our phones, and it follows us around and puts in an aerial photograph. Because that's the way that we prove to the DEP that we've actually been out on the site and we're not making it all up. Who would have thought that, right? So that will be included in the report. Appendix number 2 is the aerial photographic log, which you've seen probably about a third of those pictures in my previous report. Obviously, there's more because more specific to some of the vegetation that we've seen on the property. Appendix number C, or attachment number C, is the list, the full list of vegetation that we identified on the property, and that was Sigrid's 95% of what she did was this. And you can see that we have identified, and the DEP requires that. If they see a little list, they're like, didn't do enough. So we have a total of 125 species of flora that we identified. And appendix number D is a professional resumes. The DEP always has to see them. I'm not sure why. We've done so much work with them over the years, but that's kind of the standard protocol. So that's what we have. As you see, this report is a lot more robust than the one that I've given you. But basically, what I've given you before more or less summarizes what I think this commission would want to know, because some of these plants, we don't need to know specifics of how we go out and identify them, why we can identify this particular plant for co-specifics or other plants that look like it. But those are the kinds of things that we have to put in the report so that the DEP can recognize that, you know, we're experts in identifying vegetation. Not so much me, but that person right there. So that's pretty much where we're at. This report would be finalized probably past the planning and zoning, just to make sure there are no changes that affect the data process, any mitigation or anything else. I don't expect anything, but that's sort of a standard thing that we do. So that summarizes what you have in front of you. Any questions that you might have? I'd be more than happy to answer.
George, we just got this as we came in to sit down.
Right.
Would it be unheard of if we said we want to go through this, look it over, make sure there's nothing in here that's new, different, possibly affecting?
Well, we can discuss that. Tim will probably have a thing or two to say about that. But let me be frank. I believe that what I gave you already is sufficient for a Wetlands Commission. Because I identified the species that are sort of wetland associated or wetland dependent, like the Jefferson salamander, like the spotted turtle, to some extent the box turtle. Some of the plants we've dealt with all those. Those were identified, and I think what you see there is sort of an expansion of the same thing. There's really no new information. The only thing that's new, which we hadn't discussed in the first report, but we've discussed it through the plans, is the proposed mitigation. The removal of the barberry and the planting of the plants in those various locations. So that's what's in there, which we've already given. So is it unheard of? I don't know. Honestly, in probably 33 years that I've been doing this, I can count on one hand of nearly 2,500 jobs for permissions that's for this kind of level of information, the one that goes to the DEP, usually we do something else. Windsor was one of the years ago application, and they waited until we gave them sufficient information. Listed species is probably Mr. Sullivan will tell you, are not the purview of this commission directly, it's the purview of the state. The only way that the only nexus to that is if you have wetland dependent or wetland associated species, of which we had several, which we usually want to discuss, and the reason for that was the first report. Part of that had to do with the vernal pools, right? Because spotted salamander and Jefferson salamander have been identified in the list, and therefore we have to deal with it. What's the box here?
Basically, what you're saying is all the information, this one big report is all redundant and stuff that we've covered.
Correct. Or it's expansion of things that probably you don't care about, such as if you go through there, you'll see that every species has a little bit of a paragraph. So if you go to a particular plant, it says this plant has these particular characteristics that we look at, and we look at it for it in the right time of the year, for us to be able to identify either from flowering part or vegetative part.
So basically, this is an anniversary report of all the work that's been going on.
And what about the new stuff you have waiting on? Is that gonna have any effect on us?
Now, the only new stuff, as I said, is that those figures that identify some of these things that we talk about in the reports of the DEP that hasn't seen any of this. Can say, okay, that's when they talk about the southeastern vernal pool wetland, they mean that. If you look at a figure. So that's it. Or they can talk about the eastern swamp. So we've got a figure that shows that. So it's the site location and the routes, how they would go in, and how it would, it's pretty convoluted. That's kind of a requirement. I don't necessarily think they have.
So there's nothing in here, nothing new that would alter in any way the vegetation management that you've already laid out for us.
That's already related. I repeated what we've both shown in the plan and we've given to you in previous meetings in the report, because DEP is very specific to know what kind of mitigation you want to have. For instance, we talked about the fact that there's a possibility, not a probability, that there's Jefferson salamander in this particular vernal pool. But we also identified that there's one up here that's off the site next to the trail that goes up to Dragon Mountain that we've looked at. It looks more like a classic vernal pool for Jefferson salamander. But because spotted salmon, spotted turtle, and Jefferson salamander could potentially use this, I think if the spotted turtles are probably in this one, we had to discuss the fact that we provided not only the bottom box culvert here to allow for the connectivity, that we also pulled back the detention basin. We made sure this detention basin is not a wet detention basin to act as a decoy. And that's because it's potentially connected with the listed species, Jefferson salamander. So those are the kinds of things that we included in there that we probably didn't include the first report because some of these things were evolving as we went along.
So help us understand like the life of this report. This is draft, it hasn't gone to deep yet. So what happens and what might happen when DEEP looks at it with a critical eye?
So the nexus for DEP, listed species in these kinds of applications, is really not this commission or the planning and zoning commission, but it's the general permit that we have to get from the state for construction and water utilities. So it's a construction permit where they look not only at our erosion and condition control, but they also look at the stormwater management.
So regardless of town commission approvals that you may obtain, DEEP, nothing goes forward until they've done their review?
Yeah, they have to give us, we have to get the general permit from them,
Okay.
or else we can't go to construction.
Okay.
So that's basically it. So that's the only reason for that.
George, if DEEP requires modifications to the plan, then it goes back to the commission for modifications.
It does, depending on what it is. So if they say, we don't like the capacity of the detention basin, we're drying the wet storage for sediment, we want you to increase it, we probably wouldn't come to this commission for that. It's okay,
If there is a change in the footprint of the
Yes.
plan, it requires a review.
absolutely. Something that would affect a wetlands or upland review area.
Inside what we're approving.
Not necessarily. If DEEP sees something that they're looking for a change on, that affects the layout of the project, it requires a review.
So
Your approval is tied specifically to the plan that's before you.
Right, it's at that right there.
So if there's a modification to the plan, if there's a revision to the plan, and we've had numerous times where it's had for minor modifications.
So in my experience, there've been a few times when there has been change. Typically, what it is we think that this is too much activity for this particular listed species. So would you consider moving that unit that way a little bit, and that way unit that way? Or we understand that you have some areas out there that you're not doing anything with. Would you mitigate by clearing out more invasives and planting blah blah, so to attract listed moth X? That's happened a few times, but typically, they mostly are interested in sediment erosion control, and interested in making sure, or we need the department, that they need to agree that we've done enough work, identify whether there are any listed species on the property. And even if we say things such as, well, they might be, but they're in the wetlands, and they look at the plans and say, okay, they're not impacted the wetlands, they have the connectivity, spotted turtle, and salamander, that's good enough. So, we'll go ahead.
If I just point out, this is pretty much standard operating procedure. We're dealing with the state and also the feds with the Army Corps of Engineers. You get your local approvals, then you take those local approvals, you go to the state and feds, and you don't want to do approvals upwards to the highest authority. So we're going to do the same for the planning and zoning. In this case, because we're such a larger site, and because there was some DEP notice for endangered species, we're a little more obvious, but typically anything over 5 acres should require a drainage permit or an activity permit. And this is the standard procedure that goes through it. Typically, the DEP is not looking so much to critique the plan as they are to look at the plan and understand the plan. If you remember the first application and second application, we made a couple significant changes. We took out the circular culverts and put in the box culvert with the natural surface, and we also raised the bridge. We did that because we brought George on board, and George was anticipating what the state would probably have for comment. So we try to anticipate a lot of this stuff, and we don't expect any significant changes in our plan.
But if there is, who contacts, let's say there's a change to one of the vernal pools, something like this, and it affects our application, how do we know?
We will come back before you because we've changed our plans. It's as simple as that. The plan has changed. And we've got to go back because we can't have a construction plan that doesn't conform to what wasn't approved by this commission. So we would go back to this commission and figure that out. But again, that's happens every project under the sun. Nobody gets their state and federal permits first and then goes.
I have another quick question. This 80% rule that you were talking about, is that our purview? Or is that?
You said in the Beckley Mills project, Jim mentioned that they were in a discussion and we just incorporated it on this plan. He just says that
But he changed it. Go ahead.
I'm picking up exactly what you're saying, so instead of a CO for the building, are you willing, is the town willing to accept the fact that it's finished on the outside?
Our concern is that the site is properly buttoned up.
Right.
It's not left disarray as was the case.
Doesn't need to be occupied, just.
Correct.
And it doesn't need to
The
be.
structure,
Doesn't
the
need to be sold.
exterior of the structure is complete. The yard is graded, it's vegetated, pervious surfaces are well
But
established.
if it's just framing interior, that doesn't matter.
That's not.
Have colored in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, that's what we asked for.
Yeah.
What else
Talked about the inspection.
But yes, the monthly inspections, they were.
do we have that?
Keep in mind, with a small site plan, we don't look for the detailed control of the progress of construction. But typically with larger projects, as was the case with Benton Farms, and thank God we did, after what we went through there. So it's not a typical standard, but it's a standard for a large scale project.
you will know as we proceed exactly where we're going, when the water mains put in, when the force mains put in, so you'll have a record of all those activities. If we find endangered species, how we mitigate it. If we put a small line in, but I realize that we're probably gonna have a second page of more detailed information on the plan, so you'll have a full record of what's happening.
Do we have an agreement with the neighbors as far as the runoff is concerned?
Mr. Nancy's here.
I'd like to speak.
Well, hang on a minute. Does anybody on the commission have any other questions or comments for anybody?
I'd like to hear my neighbors.
What's that?
I'd like to hear.
Oh, yeah, but this question was first. Yeah, make sure you get all
That's
that.
all right.
Is anybody in the audience that has a comment, question for us or for the members of the?
Yeah. I'm Beverly Nancy, Harvester Road, Mr. Mulvey. I just have a concern, a question for you.
Sure.
About this, the sewer line, okay, before into the citizens' houses, units coming into, right in front of our house, the sewer line. Round Hill Road, the sewer lines, there's a right of way between our two properties, and that's connected to that 18-inch pipe. And our concern is, because I've seen it and I've heard it before, where things have been built like that and it backs up into someone's home. And that's my concern, is that we have sewage coming into our house.
Two things, that 18-inch pipe is a storm drainage pipe, it's not a sanitary sewer pipe. There's existing sanitary sewer located at the end of Harvest Hill, and that's where we're connecting. We're not connecting to any of that drainage. We're not affecting the drainage. We've got very specific notes and all that stuff is being protected. We run our pipes away from that, so we're not connecting and making any connection. The other thing, from the standpoint of capacity, we've worked with the fire district, and we're going to be installing a series of holding tanks within that area because the lower watershed for the sewer has only a certain capacity, and we don't want to overtax that capacity. So we've worked with the district, and we've agreed to install holding tanks on our site, so the majority of our pumping of the effluent is going to happen in evening hours, nighttime, morning hours, so we're not in conflict with existing houses. We don't feel is adequate capacity within the sewer line, so there should not be any backups to the sanitary sewers. But again, we're not connecting into those storm drainage lines. We recognize, and we went out there, we saw the drainage coming down the hill. We know there's a lot of water coming down that hill, and we're going to make every effort to kind of clean up the outlet at the end when we're going through there and doing the work. There's probably a lot of stone that kind of finds itself in that rip channel and finds its way through the pipe. So we're going to try to clean that out. The Jim has talked to the Public Works Department about going there and work out there themselves.
That answer your
Thank you.
question?
I appreciate that.
Was there anybody else on the Zoom? Bill, you have any comments or questions?
No, I do not. I understand that the measures taken to protect the vernal pools are consistent with the guidelines, and they're protective of the vernal pools. And so that was my concern, and I understand that's been addressed.
Thank you. Anybody else? Comments, questions from? Do you have anything, Mr. Attorney Sullivan?
Yes, just briefly. For reasons beyond anyone's control, this project's been grinding through the process, the land use process, beyond anybody's control. The pandemic primarily. As this project has worked its way through, there's been a lot of discussion. There's been exhaustive discussion. I think we've responded to all the different questions. We've been to the site. We've addressed some of the neighbors' concerns. I think this project is not only a project that's good for the town with very limited demand on town resources, but a very large economic funding for the town. And we're on essentially 20 acres of property of a 110-acre piece, protecting the entire piece through conservation easements and transfers to the Berlin Land Trust. So we've gone really beyond to protect the environment in this situation. And we ask that the commission close the public hearing and have a positive vote on this application this evening. Thank you.
Well, just, I mean, I know this is taking a long process. I know part of this is a pandemic, but you gotta understand that we're on this commission here to protect the town and the citizens of this town, and we take this very seriously. That's why a lot of things that have been going on, we're very concerned.
Yes.
And I just hope you appreciate that we're not trying to hold you up for any other reason other than want to make sure we get it right.
No, this commission didn't hold us up at all. We were held up by the pandemic and unable to get a quick response from DEP and the National Diversity Database species issue. But we're here tonight. We think we've addressed everything, and we would ask that the commission move this process forward.
Does anybody have any other questions, comments?
No, sir.
If not, I'd like to have a motion to close the public hearing.
Commissioner Rogan will make a motion to close public hearing on application 21-09W.
Can I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, gentlemen, what's your pleasure on this?
I'd like to pass it.
Well, you gotta make a motion to do
Motion and
that.
All
conditions.
right, I would like, what are the conditions?
What conditions are the phasing? And,
Would you like to do it? Go ahead.
all right, make a motion, Jim, we need to make special conditions, right, for
Yes.
wetlands mitigation.
Let me throw these out at you and see if you're comfortable with these. The first condition would be that the developer coordinate a pre-construction meeting with staff and his contractors and environmental professionals prior to the start of construction. That's number one. Number two, that the commission require monthly construction assessment inspection reports to be submitted to staff. Any and all deficiencies so noted shall be corrected within 5 working days of such submission. Another would be that the project be constructed in phases whereby 80% of each phase's structures be completed prior to commencing construction of an additional phase. And then any other item that you may look to add.
I think that covers it.
You have to, he can't, you have to state it in your motion.
So moved.
So moved.
There you go. Can I have a second?
Commissioner Rogan will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Gentlemen, good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate the input.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
here. Next up, for a regular meeting, application 21-12WF, proposal by Hydrangea House LLC to construct a retail structure with associated improvements within both wetland and flood hazard zone on lot 5, block 86 at 202 Mill Street. Is there anybody here for the,
Mr. Chairman, the property owner, Mr. Malastini, the one who's being the applicant here this evening. Just for the commission's benefit, I've had a number of discussions with his professionals, particularly his civil engineer, in regards to the design of the project. I think if you've had the time to review the plans, you'll see that there are direct impacts with the filling of some wetlands, filling in the floodplain, along with compensatory actions to mitigate the wetland filling and the flood hazard filling. It's pretty much going to be a wash. As I said, I've had a number of discussions with his engineer, Mr. Torres, and we thought best, because of the direct impacts, that the commission go ahead and schedule a public hearing for the January meeting on this application, and at that point in time, their professionals will be here to give a detailed presentation on the application. Not to bore you with consecutive presentations.
yeah, anything to add, Seven?
No, that's pretty much it.
Now, is this gonna be another retail store, or?
Yeah, what I'd like to look into the possibility of doing is mixed use. I don't know if planning and zoning will accept that or not, but small retail store downstairs and an apartment upstairs.
Anybody have anything else to add? Questions or comments? If not, motion to hold a public hearing for next month.
Commissioner Rogan will make a motion for a public hearing on application 21-12WF for next month, being January of 2022.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Seven, we'll see you next month.
Sounds good, thank you guys.
We'll be here too.
Jim, any correspondence?
Correspondence, yes. You'll notice that we have one of our favorite local properties, 155 Tollgate Road, listed under correspondence. Oh, actually, that's under other business.
Yeah.
Which we should discuss
Oh,
next.
we should do that first, that's right.
And if you recall, Mr. Chairman, we were waiting for several months to hear in regard to the completion. The commission had set a deadline for completion of the mitigation work on Mr. Olson's property. We finally got together in terms of discussing what was done, what was yet to be done. I spoke with Clint Webb, who you recall represented him in developing the plan of mitigation. Mr. Webb inspected the site and said, yes, everything's been constructed in accordance with their recommendations, other than some plantings being installed. Mr. Olson was trying, and these were specific wetland type plantings, shrubbery. Mr. Olson said he was having a difficult time locating them. He would have better luck in finding them in the spring and talking with nurseries. So at that point, Mr. Webb and I felt comfortable that we could move forward come the spring. We'll have to rattle David Olson's cage to make sure it goes to work. All in all, we have a successful completion of the mitigation.
I don't know if anybody's been by there. They did a great job.
Yeah.
From what it was when we first started to what it is now, it looks like a park now, it really does. So I commend them for that.
Yeah.
I do. So that's, no action on that, just,
More so advisory.
the next is on the list is the meeting minutes for 2022. Anybody look it over?
The dates.
It's all good. And election day is, in November, is the 8th, not on, and we're meeting on the 1st.
Yeah.
So we're all set. Last year, we
And typically, we've always been structured to meet the first Tuesday of the month. We're required under the statutes to advertise a year in advance of our meetings. We can certainly change as we have as time goes on.
My only concern is the July 5th meetings the day after July 4th. That'd be my only concern, but it's up to, you know, but to move it to the next, then you're into more vacation, things like that, so I don't know what.
We can certainly visit that either now or sometime in June. We can look and see what our application load is.
By approving this, we're also approving the meeting dates also, or the application deadlines.
Yeah.
That'll be approved at the same time, correct?
Correct.
So we need to make a motion.
Yeah, so if anybody, no comments or want to do any change, then make a motion to accept.
Okay, Commissioner Rogan makes a motion to accept the dates for next year, reading dates for next year.
Have a second? All in favor?
I-
Now, next up, correspondence. You're up, Jim.
I don't know, this is for you. It was addressed to you, not me.
Yeah, that's true, it was. I don't know if anybody knows where this is. Out on Stonington Road, there was a house, right, as you head past Timberland.
Yeah.
On the opposite side, there was a house that burned down. And I guess,
Says past Timberland?
yeah, as you're going, what's Elton Road, is it? that-
Edgewood.
Edgewood. As you just pass Edgewood, just past that, on the left-hand side, you can't see the house. It really isn't, it's a long driveway, you really can't
Oh,
see
you
the
really
house.
can't see that.
Yeah. Now you can see now there's no leaves in the trees, but all the trees are there and everything else. And there was a neighbor who complained that people who own the house or bought the house, I guess, were doing some work, cutting trees, doing other things, and then the neighbor complained. And somebody went out there, an environmental scientist went out there, matter of fact, it happened to be Bill Jackson, who went out there and looked it over, and there was some questions on both sides, I guess, from if he was doing the right thing, the neighbor, or Bill went out there to check just to make sure that things were right.
Bill, can you comment on this?
Sure. I was retained by the property owner to delineate the wetland boundary on the property to, so that the property owner knew where it was. And basically, there's a watercourse there with quite a wide alluvial section of alluvial soils of floodplain. And so the wetland delineation flags are located along the toe of the upland soils where they, at the boundary with the extent of the floodplain. And I reviewed the flagged boundary with the property owner. I don't have the exact date in my mind when I did the delineation, but there was no significant disturbance that I could see within the 50-foot upland review area, with the exception of a wood pile. And there was no disturbance to the wetlands or the wetland boundary. Then subsequent to that, I heard from Jim Horrible that the neighbor had complained. I spoke to the property owner, I spoke to Jim Horrible. And my understanding at this point, I haven't been to the site since I conducted the initial delineation, but my understanding is that there has been no significant impact to the wetland boundary or the upland review area by the property owner on that property.
So in your mind, Bill, there's really no action this commission needs to take?
Well, you know, I haven't been out there since I did the initial work, and I had and there was a complaint that was filed after that. And I know that I spoke briefly with Jim Horrible about it, and I hadn't visited the site. My understanding from speaking with Jim that it was not significant, but I'll let Jim, I'll let Jim verify that. I'll let Jim speak to that.
But Bill, your review, you were out there after it had been cleared and all the stuff.
Cleared?
I just read through this letter
Yeah.
once. I thought he was talking about removal of brush and trees.
It says right here, in April, there was clear cutting of vegetation and followed by felling of large trees.
I did not see evidence. Now, whether or not there was herbaceous or shrubbery removed from the upland review area, I didn't see evidence of that, but I don't know that to be the case. As far as large trees, there was no evidence that large trees were removed within the vicinity of the wetland boundary.
Okay. Sorry, Jim, you were about to comment.
Just going to comment that Bill and I had a conversation, I think it was probably early fall, Bill, where I was just looking for some general information from you, and I know I had contacted the property owner. She had mentioned she retained a professional to go out and delineate the wetlands, and lo and behold, it was you. So I thought, why not give you a call, which I did. And I want to say that was early fall when we spoke.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think the abutters filed a complaint back, I want to say sometime during the summer. And I wasn't aware that, the property owner had someone go out and delineate the wetlands. Upon receipt of the complaint, I called the property owner. It was tough to reach them. Obviously, there is no home there. Because the home burns down. So it took me a month or so to make contact with the property owner, and had a brief conversation and said, that there are certain restrictions on your property. You should get a better idea of where the regulated areas are. The only way to do that would be to have someone delineate the wetlands. And she said, "Oh, yes, we have." I said, "Oh, can I, would you mind if I get a copy of the report if the report was furnished?" Which she gladly furnished to me, and then lo and behold, Bill Jackson was on it. So we had the conversation. Certainly, if commission members, I can make contact with the property owner once again if you'd like to go out and visit the site. You be the judge on what you think, and perhaps if Bill wants to take another look out there.
Bill, have you marked anything as far as putting stakes or anything like that, flags or any type of?
Yeah, the wetland boundary was flagged with flagging.
Okay, yeah, because it said the initial start of this whole thing was April of 2021, and then Jim got photos and of descriptions in September and August. And I guess you went out there in September 7th, by what the letter says.
Okay.
And my concern is that there really has been no official complaint.
Well, I guess you.
I mean, nothing's been brought to this office as far as us to go. This is just for us to check it out. And Bill, you're a soil scientist, and we have to go on your information. What you're telling us is what is out there. I don't see any need for any action unless there's an absolute complaint. And we can go out there and check it ourselves if everything is marked and stuff. If you want, you can contact the owner, saying it might be members of the commission going out there. But I mean, Bill, we're relying on your expertise, and if this is what you're telling us, I don't see any need for going any further.
Well, Peter, does the complaint that you're responding to, does that complaint predate September 7th, or does it post? Is the complaint ongoing? Is there evidence of?
The last thing we got was, I believe, September.
So subsequent to the delineation that occurred on September 7th?
Right. He said on the 8th, he sent photos and descriptions of what he observed back on August. So
in August.
Yeah, there really has been nothing since actually August 28th.
Okay.
From the neighbor's point of view.
Okay.
And you were out there on the 7th, so, We haven't heard anything else. Jim hasn't heard, you haven't heard anything from, so I don't know how to proceed with this. There really is nothing to proceed with.
And just for the commission's benefit from a staff standpoint, I've always looked at it from the perspective that, yes, a wetland area is regulated activity within an actual wetland area has the potential to create an impact. This commission established an upland review area probably 15 years ago. And at that time, the intent of the upland review was to be able to better regulate and inform residents / property owners if they were going to perform activities, construction of a shed, a pool, a building addition, a garage, something significant in an upland review area, keeping in mind that it's not a no-build area, it's more of a review so that the individuals that own the property are aware of what is adjacent and how best to protect.
That they don't go into the wetlands.
They don't go into the wetlands. And that's always been my take on it, and that's the direction that's been given to me over the years, by the commission, so.
It's what we're seeing.
Mr. Zareski feels differently.
What we're seeing here, basically what he's complaining about is that they cut some brush and they're mowing it.
They still have the right to use.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
For recreational
Right.
purpose. You can use the wetland area, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill. A resident has the ability to use a wetland area for recreational purposes. You can't go in and disturb the
Right.
actual wetland, but, you can't be prevented from ice skating on a
Right.
pond that's out there, or, water.
Or fishing in it.
Right.
So Bill, I guess what we're gonna do until we hear further, Jim's gonna contact the owner. We can go out there, check out what you've done and everything else, and we'll just have to go from there. Like I said, we have to rely on your expertise and, your knowledge and your license that what you did is correct.
Well, I'm sure the delineation is correct. I think the question is whether or not there was some significant activity either in the upland review area or in the wetland boundary. And when I was out there on September 7th, I did not see evidence of a significant activity. There may have been some clearing of some shrubs, but no trees were cut. Well, I should back off that. It looked like there was some maintenance in the upland review area, but no trees were cut. So I didn't see any evidence of a significant, in my opinion, I did not see evidence of a significant activity in the upland review area, and certainly no impact beyond to the wetland itself, the floodplain area. So how do we want to proceed? I'm not sure. If the commission wants to visit the site and take a look and see what their opinion is.
Well, Bill, did you give an official report to the homeowners?
I provided a letter report to the homeowner. It was strictly my role out there was not to respond to a neighbor's complaint. I was contacted by the property owner and I was informed that they would be rebuilding the burned structure, and that they would be restoring the home and making improvements, and they wanted to know where the wetland boundary was so that they could be cognizant of it. And I told them about, I delineated the boundary, and I told them about that 50-foot upland review area, and I told them that they should not be adding soil, adding anything to the area, taking anything out of the area, or cutting down trees without notifying the town for a potential permit.
And you gave that to him in writing, Bill?
I need to read my letter report again. I know that I told them that verbally. I need to read the letter report and see what the letter report says. I don't have the letter report in front of me.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Izzo, could I speak?
Sure.
This seems a little, we got a 5-page letter from a citizen. I don't know the accuracy of the allegations, but I think that it's substantial enough that we should take a look at it and not just decide that nothing's happened since August without really investigating a little bit.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is as long as the flag is still out there, we can go out there ourselves and look and see what we think. But, we're depending on a professional to give us the information. But I agree with you. It's not that we should just say, oh, forget about it. But I think we have to get more information for ourselves to go out there and just to look.
I would agree with that.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, are we obligated to respond to this guy in some fashion?
Well, I think it's, if we do anything, I think it's just a courtesy letter without taking a position on his claims, which could be in error. But I think we could at least respond that we are, whatever action we decide to take tonight or at the next meeting, but that we inform him that we are taking his comments under advisement, some kind of a neutral response that doesn't have him think that we've accepted his 5-page letter. But I think it merits a look by us.
I agree we should go out and look at it, but right now we are under no obligation or anything because it's not part of our regular meeting. This is just a correspondence that we got.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. The letter's dated what, 12/5?
Yes.
Okay, so today's the 7th. I mean, of course we have time.
I think,
I don't think we have to. I don't even think we have to legally meet with him out there with the writer of this letter, but we should take our own investigation.
Oh, and I agree. And I think we will.
Talk about a response
Right.
next meeting.
Right.
so if the town agent could contact the property owners to let them know that individual commissioners will, once we get permission from them to go out and look at it, let's do that, and then we can all have an informed decision
And obviously I will,
at the next meeting.
the property owner should receive a copy of the complaint. That's why we're out there. So
Right.
Yeah.
we'll forward that to them.
Assuming that there's not 2 feet of snow, which I hope doesn't,
60 next week.
but, you know.
You gonna say something, Lisa?
Well, did the property owner know that Bill was a wetlands commissioner?
I don't know.
Yeah, yes, the property owner did know that.
But
Use his
if
information.
well, if anything came up, he would have to recuse himself. He's a professional, he's doing his job. So there shouldn't be any conflict as far as that goes.
So we'll do this. I will try to make contact with the property owner. I think we have issued, when I say we collectively, the departments here have signed off on the building permit for the reconstruction of the home. So hopefully there's activity out there where I can contact
Right,
someone.
right. They haven't rebuilt the house yet?
I wanna say the permit was issued this fall.
When did it start?
Last winter, I wanna say.
I think it was a long
It
time.
might even be longer than
Longer
that.
than
It might even be longer than that.
Yes.
Hard to do any construction.
Well, anyway, so I will do that. Let me make contact first. I'm gonna be away for a week, in a couple of days. So it's either before I head out or get back, we will, I'll try to make contact prior to the next meeting.
So we won't go there until we hear from.
No, wait.
Right. Yeah.
That's it.
Anything else? If not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion for adjournment.
Can I have a second?
Mr. Rogan, second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Gentlemen, have a good night, have a nice holiday, be safe.
Everybody have a nice.
And I'm sure coming up this, we're gonna get it, if anybody's up for renomination,